let's look at how to read a cladogram. A cladogram is an evolutionary family tree. The new characteristics that show up on the family tree are called derived characters. So, everything after this point has a vertebrae, a backbone. So every critter on this cladogram has the derived character, the characteristic of a vertebra. Before this, there was a vertebrae, but not a bony skeleton. So the shark does not have a bony skeleton. Anything after this does have a bony skeleton, starting with the ray-finned fish. And so do the amphibians, primates, all of these have a bony skeleton. Next, the next characteristic to occur were 4 limbs. Before this, fish and sharks don't have 4 limbs, but amphibians, primates, monkeys, and the rest do have 4 limbs if you count 2 wings and 2 legs for the birds. When it branches off, only these 2 have hair, and only these 2 have an egg with a shell. An amniotic egg is an egg that might develop outside the body, but might develop inside the body. For example, an egg and sperm. Here's how to answer the questions. The rodents and rabbits are most closely related to, well, what do they have the most characteristics in common with? You'll notice they have hair and they have all of these characteristics in common with primates. Therefore, according to this chart, they are most closely related to primates. You might think crocodiles would be most closely related to frogs. That just makes sense, right? But you can't go by your own understanding. You've got to go by the graph. And crocodiles and birds both have eggs with shells and all these other characteristics in common. So they have more characteristics on this list in common with birds than they do with amphibians. Isn't that weird? So you want to say they're most closely related to the birds. Even though you might disagree, they're not asking you for your opinion. They want to know, what does the cladogram say are most closely related? True or false? Crocodiles are more closely related to primates than they are to amphibians. Okay, crocodiles, primates, amphibians. Do crocodiles share more characteristics, more derived characters in common with the primates, or do they share more in common with amphibians? Well, you'll notice they're more closely related to the primates. So they are more similar to primates than they are to amphibians. I believe you'll be able to do number 3 on your own. The branches on this diagram indicate that blank took place. Well, we know it's an evolutionary family tree, so it can't be no evolution. Speciation is a new species. 2 different species cannot mate with each other, or even if they can, their offspring cannot mate with each other, cannot have children. So that's a possibility. Mass extinctions, no, none of these have gone extinct. Acquired traits, now this sounds good, but acquired traits are acquired during their lifetime, not when they're born, after they're born. For example, strong muscles are an acquired trait, and just because you lift weights doesn't mean your kid gets the muscles. You can't pass that down because you acquired that during your lifetime, not from your genes. So I believe this is showing that speciation occurs. A new species with new characteristics, that makes sense. What characteristics do amphibians and primates have in common? All right, amphibians and primates. Now, you want characteristics that both of them have. So the characteristics that you list must come before both the amphibians and the primates. Because if they come between them, then only the primates will have it and the amphibians won't. So before both of them, 4 limbs, a bony skeleton, and vertebrae. Those 3 things are what these two have in common. Number 6, why aren't ray-finned fish and amphibians on the same branching line? In other words, what do they have different? Well, they both have a vertebra and they both have bony skeleton, but the amphibian has 4 limbs and the fish does not. That's what's different. That's what's between the two. And finally, number 7, which letter represents the common ancestor of the birds and the amphibians? So you have to find the birds and amphibians and then go to something before both of them. So birds and amphibians meet here. Before them, aha, letter A happened before then. So critter A was the ancestor of the amphibians and the ancestor of the birds. Critters B and C are the ancestor of the birds, but not the amphibians. I believe you'll be able to finish the rest of the cladogram questions on your own. Next, let's talk about domains. There are 3 major domains that are even more general than kingdoms. So it actually goes domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. The domain of bacteria has only regular bacteria. The domain of archae, like archaeology, okay, it means the study of ancient civilizations is archaeology, so ancient things is archae. These are your ancient bacteria. These are your weird bacteria that do not act normal. These are the things that like severe and extreme conditions. And finally, eukarya are eukaryotes. These are anything that has a nucleus. These include plants, animals, fungus, and protists. I think you'll be able to answer the rest of the questions now.